Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Since they were formed in 1978, the Nigerian Labour Congress has struggled for minimum wage increase with every government in power, including during the military regimes. Between 1981 and 2004, the minimum wage has been reviewed 7 or 8 times. The struggle has always been rugged, fierce, and sometimes brutal. There are key points that stand out when we take a look at the minimum wage struggle over the years. 1. It always happened in the first tenure of a new government or regime. 2. It always started when inflation hits high. That is, when the dollar goes up and naira falls. 3. Every government has been reluctant to approve to increase the wage, and the Nigerian Labour Congress would need to sweat to make it happen. Now, let's dig into the history of the struggle for minimum wage review in Nigeria. The NLC was formed in 1978 as organized labor structure. General Olusegun Matthew Okikiola Ogunboye Aremu Obasanjo was the head of state at the time. Comrade Hassan Sunmonu was made the first president of the NLC. Hassan was a vibrant, educated civil servant. His leadership set the tone for labor actions. In 1979, Shehu Shagari won the second Republican election and took over from Obasanjo. One of the earliest actions he took as president was to increase the pay of political leaders, otherwise known as public servants. So Hassan led the NLC to agitate for their pay rise too. They demanded that their salary should be increased to 300 naira per month.
Please tell me you're kidding.
Starting from 1981. The amount may sound funny to an average Nigerian of today, but it was such a huge amount at the time. Shehu Shagari and his people were reluctant to okay the demand from the NLC. And without hesitating, Hassan led NLC to what we can consider as the first NLC strike in Nigeria. At this time, Shehu Shagari, who was just barely 1 year plus into his first tenure, saw that it wasn't just jokes anymore. The strike was already negatively impacting the economy. So he rushed to set up a team led by the then Vice President, Chief Alex Ekwueme, late, the then Senate President, Dr. Joseph Wayas, and Speaker of the House of Representatives, Edwin Ume Ezeoke, to meet and negotiate with the NLC leaders. After back and forth, they finally settled at 125 naira or $195 as the new minimum wage. After that review, the minimum wage remained unchanged for 9 years. Buhari was adamant and didn't accept to review the wage, even though his government mismanaged the economy very terribly. The NLC was only silent but not dead. They came alive in 1989 when the economy got worse and hardships intensified. They began requesting for a raise from Babangida's government. Comrade Pascal Bafiao, late, was then the president, and Adman Oshomole was his vice. Eventually, Babangida increased it in 1990 to 250 naira or $28. During the time of Abacha, the NLC was a toothless bulldog. Their leadership was weak and fearful. Abacha was headstrong, and he engaged oppression in dealing with the NLC. Pascal Bafiao, Oshomole, and co. were accused of selling out NLC to Abacha's government as they backed down and rejected calls for protest by the members. Abacha later yielded and asked the NLC and other industrial unions to set up a committee led by Sylvester Ejiofor to negotiate and determine better wage raise, but nothing happened at the time. Unfortunately, death took Abacha away and the negotiations broke down. See, got another raise. The minimum wage was upped to 300 naira. Military era was gone. Civilian government took charge, but the struggle stayed the same. In 2000, just less than 1 year into Obasanjo's first tenure, the struggle for minimum wage raise kicked off, this time with more intensity. The demands were 5,500 naira or $250 for state workers, and 7,500 naira or $81 for the federal and oil-producing state workers. Obasanjo agreed to the demands after some meetings. In addition to increasing the wage, there'd be a yearly review according to the global standard practice. So in 2002, the wage would be increased by 15%, while in 2003, it'd be increased by 25%. But as they say, you only trust Nigerian politicians at your own peril. Obasanjo's government refused. The yearly increment never happened as agreed. Yar'Adua enjoyed relative peace in the hands of the NLC. Then, it was Jonathan's time. People who are privy to this issue will agree that it was Goodluck Jonathan who made a genuine attempt at building a structure for minimum wage increase. He set up a tripartite structure because it's a committee of organized labor, employers of labor, and the government. They sat together to determine the National Daily Minimum Wage, NDMW, and other labor privileges. The National Assembly passed it as a law, and Jonathan signed it in 2010. So from 2011, the new minimum wage became 18,000 naira or $115. That's a huge win for the NLC, which was led at the time by Comrade Abdul Wahid Omar. Unfortunately, Buhari came back to power with the same economic mess as the first time he was head of state in 1983. This time, he abandoned the lovely recommendations of the agreement Jonathan signed in 2010, including increasing the wage every 5 years. So another round of agitation and strikes ensued. Eventually, in 2017, Buhari was forced to set up another committee led by Ms. Ama Pepo, and they discussed new negotiations. Buhari and Chris Ngige, the then Minister of Labour, came up with severally yeye threats. Eventually, when they saw it's not helping anyone, Buhari bowed to pressure and signed the minimum wage of 30,000 naira or $98 in 2019. Tinubu came to power and tripled the hardship. The NLC made 2 attempts to push for a review of the minimum wage, but no one listened to them. In May 2024, it became public that talks with Tinubu's government and the NLC collapsed. NLC demanded an increase from 30,000 naira to 494,000 naira. Eventually, in July, they settled for 70,000 naira, just $43, as the new minimum wage. With how the economy keeps nosediving every year with every government, it may just be the case that the agitation for the minimum wage review may not know an end.
Free Life Media.